There is one image circulating the internet right now that nobody can stop talking about. A fist closed, pressed down into the throat of the most important player women's basketball has seen in a generation, and no call, no whistle, no reaction from the officials who were standing right there. And the league did not act until the next day, after the clip had already been seen by millions of people.
Be real, keep it 100. Caitlin Clark has been on the receiving end of this sort of stuff way too much.
That image is not just a moment from a basketball game. It is a symbol. And depending on what the WNBA does next, it could end up defining an entire era of this league's history, and not in a way anyone should be proud of. Think about what it takes for a sports story to cut through the noise in 2026. Everybody is fighting for attention at all times. And yet this story, this moment, this image became the only thing the sports world could talk about for an entire week. ESPN panels, late-night radio, social media threads with millions of views. Coaches, analysts, former players, and people who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives all stopped to weigh in. That level of saturation does not happen by accident. It happens when something visceral and undeniable lands in front of people, and they look at it and cannot reconcile what they are seeing or what they were told was happening.
It's from Kennedy Carter at the very beginning, or Marina Mabrey last year, or Alyssa Thomas today, way too often. She's been on the receiving end of this stuff, and she's getting called for fouls for having her arms straight up in the air and getting technicals for clapping. And then there was the closeouts, reckless closeouts, whatever you want to call them. And I posted earlier today, she's gonna get hurt. If this keeps up, she got hurt, back issue.
How many times is Caitlin Clark going to get cheap shotted by the same 3 or 4 players over and over and over and over again before the refs do anything about it?
We are going to break down every single thing that happened this week. Because this story is bigger and stranger than most people realize, and it absolutely did not start with Wednesday night's game. There are layers to this. There's context that makes it worse, not better. And there are questions that the league has been avoiding for 2 years that can no longer be dodged. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button and drop a like on this video right now. This is the kind of story that deserves to be seen by as many people as possible. Now, let us get into it. You have to go back to Monday, June 23rd, to understand how we got here. Coming into this game against the Phoenix Mercury, Caitlin Clark was playing the best basketball of her career. Games with at least 20 points and 5 assists, a streak that, according to the record books, no WNBA player had ever put together before. She was 3rd in the entire league in points per game, 2nd in assists per game. She had returned from an injury-interrupted 2025 campaign and looked completely locked in, the kind of locked in that makes MVP conversations feel inevitable rather than speculative. The Indiana Fever were building something real, and Caitlin Clark was the engine. Defenses were scrambling contained her, and they mostly could not. 6 straight games of 20-5 is not a hot streak. That is a statement. And then Monday happened. In the 4th quarter, Clark got tangled near the free throw line with Duana Bonner, who had previously been her teammate before a messy and public split with the Fever last season.
Position, but I mean, Caitlin Clark issued a technical foul. You hear the foul react, and Clark is perplexed and shocked as to why she was assisted.
A personal foul was called on Clark, which was already raising eyebrows in the building. She clapped. That was it. She clapped. The kind of instinctive, frustrated, competitive clap you see from players every single night, in every single arena, in professional basketball. An official, Gerda Gatling, handed her a technical foul on the spot.
Contact is initiated by Caitlin Clark. She comes across the arm, into the body and hip of Tom.
The place erupted, and what happened next is almost hard to believe. In the span of 8 seconds, 5 more technical fouls were issued. Bonner got 1. Sophie Cunningham got 1. Myisha Hines-Allen got 1. Alyssa Thomas got 1. And then on the very next possession, Hines-Allen picked up her 2nd technical of the night and was ejected from the game. 6 technical fouls in under 10 seconds. It was complete and total chaos. But it was Clark who could not let this one go. And given what the league had been doing to her all season, that reaction makes complete sense. After the game, she went straight to the cameras, and she did not pull punches. She said she had asked the official directly why she received a technical foul, and the explanation she was given was clapping and instigating.
Got the tech tonight, 5th of the
Yeah,
season.
it's ridiculous. I got a technical for clapping. So like if we should all just go on the calendar now and pick a game that I'm going to be suspended for if I'm going to get technicals for clapping. I asked Gerda. Gerda said that I got a technical for clapping. So if any technical should be taken away, it should be that one. If it's truly for clapping, that's what they said they gave it to me for was for clapping. So it's just ridiculous. I don't understand it at all.
She found that so absurd that she told the referee, in those exact words, "You just don't like competitive basketball." She called it ridiculous. She said the league should go ahead and mark a date on the calendar for her suspension now, because if she was going to keep getting technicals for clapping, the math was already pointing somewhere bad. He pushed for an immediate appeal and publicly named Gerda Gatling as the official responsible, which almost certainly earned her an additional fine on top of the existing $1,000 penalty. She did not seem particularly concerned about that. She made her position clear. She was going to keep playing with emotion. She was going to keep playing with passion. And if the league wanted to give her technicals for that, then the league had a problem on its hands.
Called it that she would be targeted.
Now, here is the part that really sticks. Earlier in the 2026 season, Dallas Wings guard Paige Buchers received a technical foul for the exact same thing, clapping, and the WNBA reviewed it and rescinded it, wiped from the record. No consequence, no fine, no count toward a suspension. But when Clark's identical situation came under review, the league let the call stand. Her 5th technical in 17 games was locked in, with 8 triggering an automatic 1-game suspension. The calendar suddenly became very real. And that double standard, that inconsistency sitting right out in the open for everyone to compare, fueled a level of frustration that had nowhere left to go. That was Monday. 2 days later, things got dramatically worse. Wednesday, June 25th, the rematch at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Same 2 teams, same building, but a completely different atmosphere in the air. Clark came in with something to prove and was proving it. She was on pace for another 20-10 assist performance, which would have stretched her historic streak even further. And then Alyssa Thomas started getting physical. Early in the game, Thomas threw an elbow at Clark during a play. It was obvious. It was flagrant by any reasonable standard. No call. The officials let it go.
Yo, AT tried to take Caitlin Clark out. Look at that elbow. Oh my. She tried to take her out with the elbow.
And then came the moment that has now been played back millions of times across every platform imaginable. Clark ended up on the floor, scrambling for a loose ball. Thomas was near her, and Thomas pressed her closed fist down onto Caitlin Clark's throat. Not a bump, not a shove, a fist to the throat, in full view of the officials while the play was still technically live. And not a single referee blew their whistle. The play went uncalled, in real time, during the game, with the referees present a fist of the throat was seen and not acted upon. Then came something that made it worse. A second camera angle, reviewed later, showed what appeared to be a knee driven into Clark's groin during that same scramble. See that?
That's a fist pressed down onto Caitlin's neck, once again courtesy of Alyssa Thomas. But there was more to it. From that other angle, you can clearly see the knee pressed into the groin.
And again, nothing. No call, no stoppage, no reaction. Clark finished the first half and then quietly left the game in the third quarter with a back injury. She did not return. She had put up 19 points and 8 assists in just 20 minutes. Nobody on the broadcast could tell you definitively whether her exit was connected to the physical punishment she had absorbed, but the timeline was impossible to ignore. She took a fist to the throat and a knee to the body, and then she left with a back problem and never came back. The clips spread faster than anything the WNBA had generated all season. The league responded the following day, Thursday, after the footage had already circled the globe. The WNBA announced that Alyssa Thomas had been assessed a flagrant foul 2 and suspended for 1 game. The official language from the league described her contact as recklessly making contact with her fist to the throat area of Caitlin Clark. One game that was a punishment handed down for a closed fist contact to another player's throat, reviewed in real time by officiating crews, who declined to act and then reconsidered only after social media made the non-call impossible to defend. A one-game suspension for a fist of the throat, handed down the next day. After the game had already been decided, after Clark had already missed the second half, after the clips had already reached millions of people who had never previously watched a WNBA game, fans immediately called it what they believed it was. Not justice. Not protection. Damage control. The kind of response that looks like action but functions mostly as optics management. Because the damage had already been done in real time during the broadcast while the officials watched and said nothing. And that is the part that keeps coming back. This was not a missed call in traffic, where the contact was hidden. This was not an ambiguous situation that required slow motion replay to understand. A fist pressed into a throat should not require a Twitter-backed backlash to become a flagrant 2. It should have been called on the floor, in the moment, by people whose job it is to protect the players in front of them. The most surprising voice in this entire story ended up being Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White. All season long, White had been measured and careful in her public comments about officiating. She had not called out the refs after previous questionable games. She had stayed diplomatic even when the situation seemed to call for something sharper. But after Wednesday's game, something broke open. She stepped to the microphone and said exactly what 2 years of built-up frustration sounds like when it finally gets out. She told reporters a no-call was absolutely egregious and utterly disrespectful. She said the league had spent the entire off-season overhauling its officiating approach and making promises about consistency, and yet this still happened. And then she said the thing that fans have been waiting to hear from inside the organization, that Indiana has a generational talent and a WNBA superstar, that 2 cheap shots went uncalled in that game, and that it was absolutely unacceptable. Those are strong words, and they mattered because for the better part of 2 seasons, the relationship between Clark, the coaching staff, and the broader league environment had been complicated and sometimes confusing. Hearing the coach of the Indiana Fever use the words generational talent and WNBA superstar in the context, understanding that her player be protected was a signal. Whether you read that as long overdue or as the bare minimum owed, the fact that it took a fist to the throat to produce that statement tells you something important about how much pressure had been building and for how long. White also pointed out a separate play, where Clark hit the floor awkwardly after a closeout foul on a 3-point attempt. Officials reviewed that play on the floor and declined to upgrade it, even though Clark was grabbing at her back immediately after. If the fist to the throat situation is the headline, that secondary sequence is a fine print that makes the whole picture even uglier. And then, because this week apparently had more to give, the WNBA released its 30th anniversary poster on Wednesday night. The league is celebrating 3 decades in existence. The poster features 30 players from the history and presence of the WNBA. Legends, current stars, representatives from every franchise. The kind of commemorative item that is meant to encapsulate the spirit of the league and drive some merchandise revenue. Caitlin Clark is not on it. Her fevered teammate Sophie Cunningham is. The backlash was instant and brutal. Fans noted that Diana Taurasi, who played 20 of those 30 years, was also absent. Sue Bird was not included. Tamika Catchings was not there. Multiple all-time greats were missing. But Clark's absence hit differently given that she had just been fouled, elbowed, kneed, had a fist pressed into her throat, had a technical foul issued against her for clapping, and watched a 1-game suspension get handed down the next day for something that should have been caught in real time. The timing could not have been more combustible. Now here is the nuance according to sports business analyst Darren Rovell. Clark's absence from the poster was not a deliberate act of disrespect from the league. The company that produced the poster, Wincraft, does not hold Clark's image rights. Clark controls her likeness tightly, restricting most licensees from using her image outside of her Nike deal. Wincraft could use her name and number, but not her face. So, logistically, she was not snubbed. She just was not available to be included. That explanation is real. But here's the thing about explanations when trust is already fractured. They do not land the same way. When a fanbase watches their favorite player get roughed up for 5 days, watches the officiating fail her repeatedly, watches a punishment arrive a day late, and then sees her missing from the league's own anniversary celebration poster, the licensing explanation does not automatically diffuse the situation. It becomes another data point in a story that already has too many unflattering chapters. One fan put it directly, "She is the reason millions even pay attention. If she leaves, we leave." That is not an exaggeration. That is an economic reality that the WNBA leadership should be printing on a wall somewhere. Let's step back and look at the pattern, because it is not a new one. In 2024, Chimney Carter hip-checked Clark on a play where Clark did not even have the ball. It was not flagged during the game. The WNBA later upgraded it to a flagrant foul retroactively. There were physical incidents involving Marina Mabrey that generated controversy. And now in 2026, Alyssa Thomas has been at the center of 2 separate violent incidents in 5 days. An elbow on Monday, a fist to the throat, and a knee to the body on Wednesday. The common thread through all of these incidents is not the players involved, or the teams, or the market. It is the officiating response in real time. Plays that go uncalled. Punishments that arrive after the fact. A review process that seems to wait for public outrage before arriving at conclusions that the footage made obvious immediately. Here is something worth sitting with. Clark gets called for standing with her hands in the air, she gets a technical for clapping. She was called for initiating contact in the Monday game with the Mercury after getting elbowed, an outcome that defied the laws of physics so thoroughly that analysts were repeating out loud just to confirm they had read it correctly. The foul, after review, was charged to Clark for making contact with the arm and body of the player, who had just elbowed her. Think about that for a moment. Not just a missed call, a reverse reality, a foul called against the person who was hit. That is not a bad night of officiating. That is something else entirely. Meanwhile, a fist of the throat on a loose ball goes uncalled in real time and has to be adjudicated on a conference call the following morning. The WNBA commissioned an officiating task force in the off-season. They made announcements in May about improvements. Foul numbers were ticking upward. Leadership said they were pleased with the direction things were heading. And yet a fist of the throat sailed through a live review during a nationally watched game without generating a single whistle. The gap between what the league says and what viewers watch in real time is the entire crisis. It is not about any one incident. It is about trust. And trust does not repair itself with a 1-game suspension issued the following morning. Saratsoy, the ringer, made a point that cuts right to the heart of it. The WNBA is very reactionary. Every disciplinary decision around Clark-related incidents has come after public pressure reached a level that made doing nothing impossible. That is not a protection policy. That is a public relations strategy, and experienced sports fans can tell the difference. There is also a larger conversation swirling around all of this that nobody can fully ignore. Caitlin Clark is a straight white woman in a league that was built, historically and culturally, by black women and LGBTQ players. That context matters. And it cuts in multiple directions simultaneously, which is exactly what makes it so volatile. Some of the physical treatment directed at Clark has been framed through a racial lens by certain commentators, while others argue that framing is itself misleading or motivated by bad faith actors. The reality, as usual, is more complicated than either extreme position. What is not complicated is that the incidents happened, the non-calls happened, the retroactive punishments happened, and every time a clip circulates to Clark being fouled, without whistle, it gets picked up and inserted into culture wars that have nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with who gets to feel grieved online. The WNBA does not control how people interpret failures, but it does control whether those failures keep happening, and right now they keep happening. The best argument the league has against bad faith critics is a clean, consistent, well-officiated game, and it keeps handing those critics more material instead. So here is where everything stands. Caitlin Clark is the most valuable commercial asset the WNBA has ever had. A game on a secondary cable network drew over 1 million viewers in June because she was playing. She has single-handedly moved the needle on this league in ways that had seemed impossible just 3 years ago. Viewership records. Attendance records. Players in this league earning salaries and benefits they could not have dreamed of before she arrived. Charter flights instead of commercial. Sponsorship.